Will the Flames be buyers ahead of the trade deadline as we take a look at Rasmus Andersson and Blake Coleman? Hey everyone, welcome into Hot Topics. This episode brought to you by ProStars Plumbing and Heating, Calgary's first choice when it comes to plumbing and heating. Rob Wong joined alongside by Postmedia Calgary Flames writers Wes Gilbertson and Danny Austin. And as we speak today, guys, the Calgary Flames, of course, holding down a playoff spot, still in a firm position here. It's still a long ways to go, of course, to see what is going to happen and if the Flames are going to be able to make the playoffs. But if we're just looking at this team right now, we'll start with you, Wes. Do you feel as though this is a team that should be looking to add as opposed to last year when they were obviously sellers?
Yeah, I'm not ready to jump on the time to add bandwagon by any stretch. We sit here at the end of January, that the deadline's coming up on March 7th. But I think what this Flames team has achieved so far in sitting in a wild card spot at this point is that I don't think general manager Craig Conroy is thinking about subtracting. I don't think the Calgary Flames are thinking about selling. And I know there's fans who are going to be slamming whatever screen that they're watching this on shut because they want this team to tear it down. The reality is that they're more focused on culture and they want to reward a team that has put themselves in a really good spot. And whether reward means ultimately going to get some pieces, I'm not ready to go there yet, but I think the reward is that, hey, you've put yourself here and we're going to see this through for now. And so a lot can change. 10 really important games between now and the Four Nations break. But if the Flames are doing anything at this point, it's probably just kind of standing pat and seeing where this thing goes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a variation or maybe the next step on the debate about rebuilding versus retooling that's been sort of ongoing in Calgary for a couple of years now. The reality is the Flames are too far down this path this season to simply abandon everything and just start selling guys. I have no doubt that we'll be talking about Blake Coleman, Rasmus Andersson. There will be interest in those guys. There will be calls that the Flames get, but you have to reward the hard work that's already been done. And therefore, I just don't think the team's going to sell. As far as buying goes, like the main thing for me there, and I think Wes and I probably agree on this, is just don't do anything where you're giving up young assets or any of your really sort of highly prized draft picks, because the team is still getting younger. They are still building for the future. They're just not doing it by tanking completely and abandoning seasons and allowing losing culture to set in. So we have heard Craig Conroy say that if there's particularly a right shot center, they are interested, a young right shot center who can be a piece that they build around. Flames will absolutely make that deal. And as we're seeing teams like Pittsburgh, maybe the Islanders being willing to blow it up, I think you have to look at the lineups there and see if there are any young players who you might be willing to take a swing on. There are teams that were in the Flames position last year, just some younger guys. So add, but don't add for the next 3 months. Add for the future.
Yeah, it's definitely a tight balance that Craig Conroy is going to be walking here as long as his team is in that playoff position. Now, Rasmus Andersson just played game number 500 in his career. He, of course, is set to become a free agent after next season, Wes. You've seen a lot of his former teammates out the door already. There was obviously a lot of rumors last year that he might be someone that was on the move, ultimately was not. But what do you think his future is here in Calgary with just 1 year after this season remaining on that deal?
This is the hottest topic in Calgary. This absolutely around the Flames is what everyone wants to talk about. I have one particular social media user who likes to remind me every 15 minutes that he thinks Rasmus Andersson should be traded. I think so because of Rasmus Andersson's contract status, the fact that he's entering the final year next year, he's eligible to sign an extension as of July 1st. And so I think what you're hearing on both sides is let's sort of pump the brakes. We've heard Craig Conroy say many times, we see Rasmus Andersson as a Flame. He leads the team in minutes. He's as important as anybody in the locker room. He really is a tone setter. And so I think you circle back to him in the summer and say, okay, well, what does an extension look like? Or do you want the maximum 8 years, which is always a little tricky for a guy who will be 30 when his next deal starts? Do you want X number of dollars? Like, what are you talking about? And then maybe make the decision from there. But the appeal for those who want to see Rasmus Andersson traded is sweetheart deal, huge minute muncher. There's fans who, when they're saying trade Rasmus Andersson, it's nothing against the player. It's that they think they can get a king's ransom for him. And for every reason that we just recapped in the last answer, I just don't see the Flames sending one of their most important players out the door when they're right in the thick of a playoff race.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I get it. I see the argument. I understand the argument for trading him. There's actually no part of me that, despite what I'm about to say, that discounts that entirely and thinks that it's stupid or dumb or wrong. But it's just my question is that trading him is based a lot on the idea that guys like Zane Prek, like Hunter Bluskevich, like we're seeing Henry Muse have a great season in the OHL. That the Flames have these sort of young defensive prospects who might be, able pretty soon to come up. But we have to be realistic about their timeline. I mean, Zane Prek is in the OHL right now. Hunter Bluskevich has had an adjustment period. He's playing well. He's adjusted well, but he's not putting up massive numbers in the AHL with the Calgary Wranglers. So if you're signing Rasmus Andersson up, I feel like by the middle of his contract, at the earliest, that's when those guys might be willing to take his spot on that top pairing at best. So then you're shifting him down. Presumably the cap goes up, and you're shifting him down the lineup. And we have heard, look at when Chris Tanev was here, look at when Mark Giordano was here. We have heard these young defensemen that the Flames have had, including Rasmus Andersson at the time, but they've learned from those veterans. So it's great to have guys like Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Andersson around, even if they are declining towards the end of their contract. So again, I see the argument, but like Wes, I actually think that if you trade Rasmus, you got to be trading a bunch of these other guys too, because at some point you can't just hang on to guys while your team is terrible, and I don't think that's worthwhile.
Yeah, you're really in a spot where if you do move him down the line, you're going to be looking for someone exactly like him. So that doesn't seem like the best idea as it currently stands. Go ahead, Wes.
No, not even down the line. The day you trade Rasmus Andersson, you're trying to find a guy the next day to play on your top pairing, to log that shutdown role, to be on your number one penalty kill. And so it's immediate. We saw, we've seen it, as Danny alluded to, in the past year, but guys like Rasmus Andersson don't grow on trees, and the young prospects that we have named are not necessarily in the same mold of player anyways.
Absolutely. Lastly, Danny, you wrote about Blake Coleman recently. He's having another strong season, of course, coming off a 30-goal campaign a year ago. He's still got a few years left on that deal. You mentioned before that he might be an attractive piece to a team, of course, looking for some depth scoring. But why do you think he's had so much success the last couple of years here?
I mean, I'm going to lead with the dumb answer, but I think Blake Coleman's a really good hockey player. So the reason I chose to write about it was because even when Blake Coleman isn't putting up offensive numbers, I still think that there's so much value that he brings to the team. Even the intangibles. Him and Michael Backlund have sort of been, it was Andrew Mangiapane last year, just slotting Matt Coronado and with them this year has done so much for the guy's game. I mean, you're learning from two veterans, and Coleman, a guy with 2 Stanley Cups, and Backlund, the captain of the team. They can play 200 feet, not 60 feet, as I wrote for some reason in the first draft of my Blake Coleman story. But he can play the whole ice, and he is a guy who could shut down opponents, and you're happy if that's what he's doing. I mean, he's elite at that. But he's got 7 points in his last 7 games. He's suddenly starting to produce. Now, there have been some empty netters in there, but Blake Coleman was a 30-goal scorer last year, and this team needs goals. So when you see anyone start to produce from a writer's perspective, it starts being notable. But when a guy like Blake Coleman, who already is doing so much for the team, that's really good news for the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, it's consistency. Like, if we had Ryan Huska on this video, he'd be saying, I know exactly what I'm getting from Blake Coleman every night. Michael Backlund's the same way. It was a big story a week and change ago that Michael Backlund's giveaway cost his team a game in St. Louis. And it was a big story because, in 3 or 4 years, we probably haven't written that Michael Backlund cost his team with a giveaway. Like, it's just so rare in his 17, I believe now, seasons with the Flames. We haven't typed that sentence. Hey, Michael Backlund might have cost his team the game. And Blake Coleman's very much the same. You know what you're getting. Certainly has the pedigree that comes with a guy who has won Stanley Cup rings with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the offense it's sort of a bonus, but as Danny outlined, because this team is having such trouble producing, and credit to them for being in a wild card spot despite being one of the lower scoring outfits in the NHL, because they're having trouble producing. You can't treat any offense like a bonus. They're going to need it from a kind of all sources, and Blake Coleman's one of those guys who's had an uptick of late that's certainly been noteworthy.
Yeah, it's been a big reason why the Flames are sitting in that playoff spot. As always, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. For Wes Gilbertson and Danny Austin, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.